Just try to put this in context so that everybody would see what the focus is supposed to be and where we have gone wrong, where we have misinterpreted or misrepresented the message that the Synoptic Gospels tell us that Yeshua preached. So now he gets my attention. He is teaching something that Moshe says we should check, and it seems to match. Okay. The question of what did Yeshua teach is different from did the disciples believe Yeshua was God? That is why I stated clearly, that is not the focus. We want to look at the message. When we come to what the disciples teach, what the disciples believed, we are going outside the message. Now we're trying to find out why they thought that he was God, why they came to believe that he was God. All these things are extra. The focus is the message. Okay. One mistake that people make, because these are seen together, Mark, Matthew, Luke, because they say the same stories, because they narrate some of the same events, does not mean that you should put them together and read it. The problem people have with reading these accounts, especially Matthew and Luke, is the problem of assuming that one account is basically saying the same thing as the other one. That is not true. Mark is not saying what Matthew is saying. He's not saying what Luke is saying. Matthew is not saying what Mark and Luke are saying. Luke is not saying what Mark and Matthew are saying. You have to let Matthew speak for himself. You have to let Mark speak for himself. You have to let Luke speak for himself. You can't take the three books and put them together. The moment you do that, you've created your own gospel. This is very critical. You can't put them together and get the 7 last saying of Yesu. Because you take what Mark said, what Matthew said, what Luke, and you put them together. You don't do that. No author would allow you to do that to his materials. If I write a book on Ruth, and Madam Cynthia writes a book on Ruth, you don't put it together so that Cynthia's work will answer mine. No, Cynthia is looking at it from a different perspective. I'm looking at it from a different perspective. I have to read Cynthia's to understand the perspective that she's writing, because she's not writing what I'm writing. People tend to read Matthew as if he's saying the same thing as Mark, Luke as if he's saying the same thing as John, Paul's letters as if they are the same thing as James, Revelations as if they are the same thing as Daniel. Each of the books of the New Testament has to be read on its own to see what its message is. This is critical. Otherwise, we're going to come up with our own gospel. Even when two authors are talking about the same subject, they may be saying very different things about it. I give you an example. That is the same with reading the Torah too. Yes, as somebody said in the chat, it's the same thing. Let the books speak for themselves. Don't add them. I give an example. Matthew and Luke, they are at clear odds in their infancy narratives in some very important ways. They agree that Yesu was born in Bethlehem, even though he came from Nazareth. But the way they both make it happen is not only different, but they are at odds. is important. You won't see this because you take the books and you smash them together. When Matthew was writing, Luke wasn't sitting next to him. Let us read what Matthew says. Let us read what Luke says. There are some simple differences. Luke has the annunciation to Mary. When the angel came, the annunciation was to Mary. Matthew has the dream of Joseph. Luke has the trip to Bethlehem. Matthew has the flight to Egypt. Luke has the shepherds. Matthew has the wise men. See, when you watch the movies, they combined it together. But no, Luke did not write about wise men. In their infancy, both Matthew and Luke give Joseph's genealogy, and they are different genealogies. Read Matthew 1 and Luke 3 and ask who Joseph's father is, who his grandfather is, who his great-grandfather is, who his great-great-grandfather is. Read Matthew 1 and write it down. Then come to Luke. Write Luke and write it down. Read Luke and write it down and compare. They are different, all the way back to David. Find out what is the hometown. What Matthew says the hometown is, what Luke says the hometown is. In Matthew, Joseph and Mary come from and are resident in Bethlehem. They relocate to Nazareth only a couple of years after Jesus' birth because of the dicey political situation in Judea. Luke is even more crystal clear that they are from Nazareth and only happen to be in Bethlehem because of that census, the census that accordingly was under Octavius. So different accounts. After they did their duty, both political and religious, they returned home. Luke is clear that Joseph and Mary returned home immediately after they fulfilled what the law requires of a woman who has given birth. You know, the whole after 32 days you bring this in the book of Leviticus 12. You can read it there. So this is what Luke says. Matthew has them still in Bethlehem until the wise men arrive months or up to 2 years later. And then they don't move to Nazareth as Luke has it, they flee to Egypt. Which is which? Do we go with Luke or do we go with Matthew? Even if you put it together, you can't solve the problem. So these are differences. That's why you have to let the book talk for itself. Don't smash it together. Let Mark go for it. Let Luke tell you what he saw, how he saw it, his beliefs, because they don't believe the same thing. I'll show you.